Greetings and God bless. I just wanted to talk about the issue of when people own multiple properties. Let's say you've been blessed and your grandparents, had a rental and your uncle or whatever. And so maybe you're very wealthy and you have two homes or three homes or four homes and you keep them for yourself because they're mansions. They're in just a charming part of town, and it's just walking distance, 10 minutes to get to the theater or to a restaurant or something like that. Um, but you always stay in LA or New York or Switzerland or wherever. Uh, this message is for you. Because what I have noticed when I was living in Missoula, Montana, which is a very popular place, it's always featured in Outside Magazine. It's listed as the best place to live. It's not, number one. But all these people who, are reading these things, they're trying to improve their life. A lot of people relocate to Missoula. And I can't say it's always been a good experience for them, especially in more recent years. It might have been nicer to move to Missoula 10 years ago or 15 years ago, but generally people in Missoula or people in Montana, you really come into your own when you're third generation Montanan and third generation Missoulian. And even then you can be third generation and you still don't come into your own. So there's this clannish kind of quality, what I consider like what I understand to be provincial, like, when you're more in Europe and the continent and they talk about people being provincial, they're sheltered, they're not worldly. So I grew up in New York City and, I just went to school with people who were, recently from Zimbabwe or Korea or China or Iran or whatever. I mean, we went to school with lots of people from Puerto Rico or Ecuador or Guatemala, China. I mean, there's the whole world that was going to all the schools that I went to. And so, I grew up with a more worldly perspective. I just knew people from all over the world. And, basically they're just like you and I, and everybody has their quirks. But when people are in a provincial area, and the thing is, there's provincialism, there's clannishness even in a major city, even amongst like in the hood. People are clannish in the hood. That's why we have gangs. People are clannish amongst Native Americans. That's why some tribes hate other tribes with a passion. And it's just so ironic and it's so hypocritical. Just like Jewish people, when they're being really very particular about their bloodlines, Ashkenazi or whatever. I don't know all about it, but I just find it very interesting how all the people who have been persecuted, whether it's, people of color or Jewish people, they are the most preoccupied people at times with race, because the rest of us who are just like, I just want to, what am I going to eat tonight? Or what am I going to learn some new movie or something like that. Like the rest of us are not sitting here thinking about, is my bloodline adequate? Is my skin color light or dark enough? I mean, yes, there's white people who are trying to get tanner, or there's white people who are getting surgery on their face or something like that. Yes, but not as a culture. Like what I'm trying to say is, I just got distracted, but it just seems like people of color and people of certain heritage very, very preoccupied with their bloodlines. And then the rest of us mutts, we're not sitting here picking apart people's bloodlines and skin color degrees and stuff like that. Like we've got better things to do. So anyways, I got distracted, but I'm talking about when you're wealthy and you have multiple properties, that you keep for yourself, but you're never there. Maybe you're there 5 times a year, maybe 10 times. But, the location like Montana, it's hard to get to. It's a pain to get to. Yes, it's pretty, but there's not really enough that's really there. The caliber of people, I would say for Montana, for um, South Dakota, and when I was in Norfolk, Virginia, not really good caliber of people. Not that great, not that healthy, not that brilliant. And like I encountered more kind of inspiring, amazing people when I was living in New York or the Bay Area, and I would even say in Portland, Oregon. There's something about major cities that brings out the best in people. And when they're just waiting to inherit their parents' place, and then where all this stuff comes so easy to them, because then they get the property and then they make money off of selling that property. And then they're just doing all this travel that they get to do. And yes, yes, there's hassles when somebody is rich and they're buying all this thing, all this stuff. Okay, yeah, that's legit. But when you have multiple properties in prime locations that you're never there, and I really actually don't like Airbnb because that makes things harder as well for people who are looking for a place to rent. Like I see all the time. I've heard Mike Adams, I've heard Anomaly, I've heard Peggy Hall, and I'm sure there's other patriots, other conservatives, and they keep on complaining about entry-level workers not working at the Dunkin' Donuts or wherever. Now, the thing is, where I'm here, like, okay, last 6 months ago, there was all these want ads. And even now, there's still want ads, which is great. But people are working. I'm seeing people working. And I really don't know anybody who is getting any stimulus money. So I don't know who the conservatives are complaining about in terms of not working. I think those conservatives actually have family members, people they know, neighbors, and just acquaintances that they're judging, because there may be a reason why the people that they know that aren't going to work at that McDonald's or Burger King, maybe there's a reason why they don't want to work there, because there's all this suffocation that they have to contend with. There's all this fighting about keeping their body a temple for God. Like being an entry-level job, you're the lowest of the low, you have the least amount of rights, and you have the lifestyle that makes it hard to fight to keep what little rights that you do have. Because when you're making $8 an hour or $12 an hour and you're paying $1,000 in rent and you have kids and you have to, go 5 miles this way to the grocery store and 5 miles back home, and you have to deal with all the nonsense of parking or reckless driving, because it seems like everybody gets to be a reckless driver now. It doesn't seem like there's any regulation. You just can go and kill people, and nobody cares unless it makes for a good news story. But people it's anarchy, in my opinion. Like, pretty much, I think we're in anarchy, and it's yet to be complete anarchy. But anyways, so if you are a wealthy person and you want that person at the convenience store to be working there, or at the pizza place to be serving you, or at the maid that's going to be cleaning your place, you need to get out of these prime locations. Stop being so stingy. Stop hoarding all this property that you don't intend to use. Maybe you come and use it 6 times a year, maybe 10 times a year, because I see those places. I have walked by just these prime locations, whether they're apartment buildings or mansions, like really nice houses, and nobody lives there. And you could tell because bee colonies have set up a nest, that anybody living there would have noticed. or there's just other ways to take to note. And you know give up that property. You're not going there. Sell that property, but don't sell it to an international landlord. To Don't sell it to like some evil property manager that's going to exploit that land and exploit the people. Like when I was living in Missoula, there's cashiers at the grocery store. So, they had lived in the area for a decade or longer, and it was like near impossible for them to find a decent place. When you're an adult, it's tough to live with roommates. And like when you're in your 60s, there's not a whole lot of people that are psyched about that kind of, like so many roommate situations. They're like, I want to live with somebody in their 20s, maybe 30s. Uh, and even so, even if you do have a roommate who's open-minded, you're having to deal with roommates who don't know how to share a space. They either don't know how to share, or they take your space up and they let their family and friends take your things and your space. And so it's really challenging. So there's not a lot of single occupancy housing, where a clean, sober person can actually just walk to work. No, it's like everybody's supposed to buy a house in the suburbs, $250,000 for some whatever, and have to drive a half hour. I mean, that seems what is being set up. Like that's what city planners seem to be doing. That's what suburbs seem to be doing. Everybody just wants everybody to be a half hour away. Then they have to come here. So you have this insane lifestyle that's this overpriced, unnecessary house for a car that then you have to deal with mechanics and weird changes in gas prices. So you're at the mercy. Not only that, but like weather, like when it's too windy or when it's too, when there's all this snow. So you're at the mercy of that. And, because you want to make sure you get your paycheck, you're going to risk your life because you have this half hour drive. Instead, when you could be walking to work in 10 minutes. Yes, so it's windy and icy, but a walk to work is less dangerous than 60-mile-an-hour winds and ice on the road for 30 minutes. But that's what the evildoers want. They're like, okay, so the house has to be something overpriced and puts you into debt for the rest of your life, and then you have to go into more debt to have this car. Then you have to risk your life because now we're going to have reckless drivers who are texting and not paying even attention to the road. There's drivers who are just like, you all watch out for me, and the police aren't going to do anything about it. So we have this anarchy on the roads, and then go to work in an unregulated workplace that is anarchy as well, because employers, they think they own you. And then conservative entrepreneurs online, who their business is online, and they complain about why people don't want entry level jobs where they're having to suffocate, they're having to fight about, possibly get an injection and being brainwashed, getting beaten down about the stuff, the hogwash that's going on, and these comfortable, privileged, insulated, naive entrepreneurs who are conservatives complaining about entry level workers. I mean, shame on you, because it takes a lot to live in your slum house that you're paying too much for, to get into your tin can that you probably paid too much for and the mechanic isn't taking care of, and then driving on reckless roads where it's anarchy because people don't care. People are sleep deprived, they're on drugs, they're drunk, and they're changing the ringtones on their phone. And it's anarchy on the road. So you're taking your life in your hands to drive on the road, to get to your horrible job where your boss is going to try to sexually harass you or medically harass you. That's what this is. Where there's medical harassment in the workplace that's been being endorsed by the new colonizer, the communist colonizer of the USA, through the pharmaceutical industry. So how shame on those conservative entrepreneurs who are bashing people that I have opted out of that insanity. Because the conservatives that are complaining about entry level workers not wanting to have to fight medical bullying at work, and then anarchy on the roads, not to mention bad road conditions and very little being addressed about that. Bad living conditions, nobody protects tenants, and nobody protects like homeowners from real estate fraud or whatever. I mean, you have to be really, really connected to be protected, to just have your basic constitutional rights. You have to really be on the ball about that. And what the powers that, what the evildoers, the Freemasons, they just want everybody to be to surrender themselves to this insane lifestyle, and to numb themselves with alcohol, to numb themselves with drugs, numb themselves with working or whatever. And it seems to me that a decent city plan would be that, like, of course, this is the United States, and it is a free country. So if you do own 5 properties and you just keep them for yourself and they gather dust, that's your right. And I am just saying, though, if you have property in a prime location that's walking distance to this nice part of town, and let's say you never use it, sell that property. Just let somebody else have it. And don't sell it to a huge, international property management company. Don't sell it to BlackRock or Vanguard or Bill Gates, for Pete's sake. Sell it to a real person. And, I would sell it to maybe somebody who's local, because I really don't encourage, like Californians and people in Oregon and New York, I don't know. They've been moving to good spots. And the thing is, it's like, why didn't they fight the tyranny when it started? Like, because everybody just wants their comfort. So you're going to have these comfort seekers. Do you want these comfort seekers? These comfort seekers who have no backbone, when, they have no backbone, they have no civic engagement, because it's just, I mean, and of course I'm speaking in broad strokes, but it seems to me like, I don't know if the comfort seekers that are moving, I don't know if they are going to try to push the LBGT pedo agenda, or the Marxist critical race theory, guilt people by virtue of their skin color. I do sense that there's that there is that possibility that they may be into the medical mafia. Like they still kind of believe in the medical mafia narrative. And that's kind of a poisonous thing to have in your space for relocation. So anyways, hopefully that makes sense. And my point is if you are wealthy and you have a property that you never use, that's in a prime location, put it on the market. You don't need it. If you spend 360 days in Acapulco or something like that, like, stop hoarding what people desperately need, because Americans that are renters are like, there's no place for us. There's no place for us. Where are we supposed to be? and I people are like, well, just buy a house. And like, not a lot of people can afford the down payment for a house, much less whatever, like, of the however how much thousands of dollars for a repair. Once you move in, then the water heater breaks. It's like there's, as you may well know, there's a lot that goes into it, that somebody who's being forced to buy a house, like, they are not financially prepared for. I mean, that's why I rent, because I can't afford, $10,000 for a new plumbing system should something happen, right? I just don't have it. And I'm not familiar enough with taking out loans, and I don't know if I could even pay back. Let's say one year it's the plumbing for $10,000, and then the next year it's the window, and then the next 6 months it's mold or something like that. Like, I just don't feel like I have tens of thousands of dollars to spend on a new home, like, just on the unexpected stuff that would occur with a new home. So that's why I rent, because, like, when I look up how much mortgage is paid on a place, and when I look up the property taxes, it's something like, a lot of houses, the mortgage is like 250 or 300, let's say, and then the property tax can be like 2,000 or $6,000 for the year. So the person is paying, let's say 300 times 12 is that, so they're paying, like, let's round up $4,000 for the mortgage, and then let's say $6,000 for property taxes. So they're paying $10,000 a year. Now, that is when, like, I have lived in places where it's, there's 2 or 10 people paying, 450, and the landlord, or 500 or 600, and the landlord complains that they're not making even. I don't understand. I don't understand that. I mean, maybe because of the utilities and stuff like that. But anyway, to say to a renter, "Well, just buy a house," that's irresponsible, because the renter may not be able be able to fund a house and fund what's required with the upkeep of a house. So that's why we rent. So it comes back to, if you're owning a prime spot that's really charming and you like it when you visit once a year or once every few years, like, that is just being selfish, and it's harming civilization. Like, people need a rental in the United States, and conservatives don't want to build affordable housing. And I don't mean Section 8. I don't think projects are a good idea. I don't really like Section 8, because now landlords are like, oh, if somebody's poor, they need to just get on Section 8 so we can charge them $1,500 that we get from the government. So landlords aren't like, what can a person afford? What can that person working at Denny's? Okay, they're making $8 an hour, $300 a week, 3 times 4, they're making $1,000, a month. And that's what landlords are charging. They're like, oh, we want to charge $1,500 for a crummy slum somewhere, and that's somebody's entire income if you are this entry level worker, or yeah. So nobody wants to build a place where somebody can pay $300, $400 for a studio. Nobody's trying to build anything like that, and it's not that hard. It's like I don't get it. And so if you want a thriving location, you have to make it, like, it can't be just where millionaires can afford to live, because it takes all levels of a society to be able to survive there. So I think, like, people are hoarding property. I think people are hoarding apartments. I think property managers are also trying to have a uniform, inaccessible price range for nice places, because every place that I see that's like, $1,500, it's always walking distance to the best amenities, of course, and it's a nice place. And and the thing is, people who can afford, paying $2,000 or whatever a month for rent, um, those folks who have that much money, number one, they probably would rather travel or own a home. So when they do, let's say, move somewhere to pay $2,000 or whatever a month for an apartment, like that's somebody who has possibly money to burn, um, or who has access to people with a lot of money, because homeowners aren't spending $2,000 a month. Like, I mean, even their mortgage, it's like 800 if it's a high mortgage, if it's a new one. Um, or at least that's my understanding. Maybe I'm mistaken, but property managers are also screwing Americans with these crazy rents. And I think property managers and landlords, they're totally dissociated from the reality of wages. And I think if somebody is blessed with wealth, if somebody is blessed to own property, um, like they need, like, okay, do they, so I guess everybody wants to have millionaires as their renters. They want to have very wealthy people as their renters. And y- like, it's not like wealthy people are the only good people. Like, people who are on a budget, people who have a limited income, like, we deserve to have a place to live. I mean, and I don't mean, it's an inherent right, constitutional or whatever, but it just seems to me like, if a property manager or a landlord is going to just charge whatever they want, why aren't you charging $1 million a month? Because that's the mentality that landlords and property managers have. They're like, well, if a tenant is having trouble finding, paying 100 or paying 1,500, well, they need to just find somebody to help them. They need to make more money. Well, if the landlord or property manager thinks that there's magical thinking that somehow all tenants should be able to pay these painful prices, why isn't the property manager or landlords requiring they pay $1 million a month? Because the property manager and landlord knows expecting somebody to pay $1 million a month is ridiculous. They know that. But instead they're like, okay, I'm going to just charge them $1,000 a month. $1,000 for a place that's not worth it. Like, I could understand maybe $1,000 a month, in some prime, wonderful location, and a pool and the beach, and you know, museum or whatever. I mean, like, I can understand some places. Some places are worth it, staying at a palace, okay. But uh, where, like, where are landlords and property managers expecting people to get this money? And I think that's what they're trying to do, is they're trying to get people who can't afford it to ask their friends and family and parents and whoever, the state, for money to afford housing. So it's just really messed up. And I think, like, property owners are like, yes, well, I need to have my second home, and I need to do my travel to Paris, and I have my quality of life to uphold, and that's what my property is there for. And I think, like, if you're renting, um like, you can't be expecting people to pay you like $1 million a month, right? If you're renting, because if somebody has $1 million a month to spend, they're going to buy a mansion somewhere for themselves, of course. So if you're renting, I mean, you're renting, it's like a boarding house kind of a thing. And you're not, like, not everybody is royalty. Not everybody is in the system, in the matrix, in the mafia. And I think like people who are in the mafia, who have, you know, acquiesced to the devil, they do have access to money. And not saying that all people are doing that, but I think there's something to it. I think that I wonder if, because there's people I know who are flourishing and just have just money is not an issue at all, and then there's other people I know who money is just a constant struggle, and um, I wonder if those who have just think worldly things come to them, if if there's some, either some pact with the devil that them or a family member has made, or of course God is blessing them. Now if you are a believer and God has blessed you with property that you can rent, but you're charging way too much, or you're not using it, um like, are you using God's gifts? Because are you grieving the Holy Spirit for being stingy, for hoarding God's gifts? Because if you are blessed, like, you're here to do something with your gifts. It's as I understand it. So I've just been struggling with the issue of housing. I mean, ever since I was a young adult, it's always been a challenge to find a decent place. Um, And like now that I'm out of major cities, it's even harder because the market is worse. And I guess more properties have been bought up by international landlords, and property managers are just like raising rates, excuse me, across the board. So, like, people are complaining about the homeless, the tent cities in Portland or California or Seattle. The thing is, international landlords, property managers are creating this issue of homelessness, of houselessness, because they want people to either get on Section 8 so they can pay that 1,500 for a slum, or they want people to, buy a house with money that they don't have. I mean, so what are people supposed to do? Like, I see hours of videos of people showing the tent cities, and they're the whacked out people are all under the influence or whatever. And of course, that's just the most scandalous part of the tent cities. But where are people supposed to go when they can't afford the rent? When the rent is unreasonable. Like, I think people in those 10 cities, I bet there's some people who could afford a $300 a month rent. But no city is willing to build single occupancy units, like little apartments, which I think they used to have at the turn of the century. Um, or there was boarding houses and people just kind of knew how to live well together. I mean, they like, there was just more know-how of navigating interpersonal relations. And so I think people are wanting, they're bashing the tent cities, but nobody's talking about cities that don't want to build affordable housing for single occupancy. Nobody's talking about that. Because all I've noticed is people are building, whenever a city is developing, building a new thing, they're either building a homeless shelter where crystal meth is just thriving, or they're building condos for millionaires where it's like $300,000 for each apartment. And so money goes into that, like city funding, I think, that was supposed to go into affordable housing. Oh, it gets turned into millionaire condos where those millionaires are never there. That's the thing. Like, when a city is just like, oh, so greedy, so they want the millionaires to buy a condo or whatever. So they want that property tax. So, okay, the city has their property tax and they get to pay their mayor or whoever gets the corrupt money from. Um, and so you have these people who are never here, but they own property. So you have these all these empty apartments. But the city's getting their property taxes. But you have all these empty apartments, and your entry level people that can't get to, they have to drive an hour to get to the gas station where they work. Like, that's not functional. And the thing is, it's like they're making entry level people have to do charity, because basically the entry level worker ends up volunteering to work at the gas station, the crummy job, because they're having to pay for all this gas. They're having to pay, to have the, like the mortgage for the house that they're living in 30 minutes out of town. Um, so like it's just amazing how cities are so um immature. Like, they're just they don't understand how people work. Like, if you want to have a thriving city, you need to have housing for your entry level workers, and of course, housing for your mid level and your executive level and your famous people or whatever. I mean, but you need to have housing, you need to have infrastructure. Like, how about having some public transit so that saves people maybe the issue of cars. I know, like, anywhere outside of New York or San Francisco or Portland, people are like, oh, that's absolutely insane to think about having public transit, like real public transit. I don't mean like once an hour and it ends at 5. That's like absolutely ridiculous, because people that need that public transit, they get off work at 5 or 5:30. So you can't just stop at 5. That's when those who need public transit need it the most, especially when it gets to be nighttime. So you're gonna, in cities, in more, I guess, rural locations, they're just expecting everybody else to just call their family and get them a ride. They're not, like, a city isn't making a place welcoming to their low income entry level people. And I think, like, what cities that make it hostile to those who don't drive and to those who don't have thousands of dollars a month to spend on rent, like, they make it hostile because they're afraid of poor people. But that's all who's really then there. Like, because the when cities are totally oblivious to their middle class and their lower middle class, when cities make it so hard, um, the people who are lower middle class are going to be like, I'm out of here. I'm moving to Iowa or something like that. I don't need to suffer this much. And so the people that remain are the utterly destitute, utterly, like monstrous, lost people. So you have the super poor, just messed up people, and then the city planners and the, you know government welfare recipients, like, and I mean government welfare, like middle class welfare, like because that's what a lot of, I think, a lot of medicine is middle class welfare, because all they're doing is like paper shuffling. They're not really helping people. They're just, like, filling out insurance forms to get their middle class welfare. And other big companies, the universities, just incompetence. Like, once people get their tenure or whatever, I mean, people can be incompetent. Uh, and So I think, it doesn't take much to make a decent city. I'm sure people have written books and crunched the numbers about how, you have a healthy city, and it's not just millionaires buying your condos, folks. That's not a healthy city. It's not just having tourists stay at your Airbnbs. And I really don't like Airbnbs, because people are like, "Oh, I'm going to charge $100 a day for somebody to stay in my room." So when people are used to charging $100 for a place that they're paying probably $30 a day for, so then homeowners, or even the people who are renting, doing their Airbnb as they're renting, like like there's just this weird greed. It's not weird, but there's this greed that goes on. So that person who maybe got that apartment and it's like maybe it's at $600 a month, they're charging $100 a day for somebody to stay there, let's say. And yeah, let's say they make it a nice place, but a lot of the times it's kind of trashy. Um, so I really don't like how Airbnb has just skewed this mindset, because everybody's now like just so greedy. It's not even like, you know, yeah, I just like they're not an innkeeper who's just trying to, this is their job or whatever. Like people are trying to be rich, and there's nothing wrong with being rich, but um, like the way they're trying to be rich is going for what's people's like people are trying to survive. Like, if you're selling an essential oil or some incense or something like that's conspicuous consumption, but when you're getting people where they need to live, like when they need a roof over their heads. And this is like going on nationally. It's like a virus, like uh it's troubling, and that is why people are living in tents. That's why there's tent cities, because it's not just that they're druggies. It's not just that they're mentally ill. It's just that, like people who own or who have a rental, they're charging way too much. They're charging 3 times what a place is worth. And there's no regulation. There's nobody protecting renters or to-be renters. And so we have these tent cities because uh, it's impossible for people to get a rental unless they have somebody who's willing to pay $2,000 a month or whatever for them. And it takes a lot of humility, and it's a very uncomfortable thing to accept somebody else, let's say your parent paying your rent all the time or whatever. So I just wanted to put that angle. That's my theory about a little bit about the tent cities. And it's my theory about, I think that there are rich people who have second or third or fourth homes in really charming little places that they like to visit once a year. And so they keep that home because they're paying, let's say $10,000 a year to have this mansion that they visit, but they're taking up space. They have prime real estate that they're not using. Like a house is meant to be used. A house is meant to be lived in. It's not a museum for you. It's not a placeholder for you to return once a year. It's just so selfish, you know? And of course it's your choice, and you will have to talk to the Lord about it. Because if God blessed you with this space, use that space, live there. Because that's one last thing, and I'll end on this, is that when we have millionaires that have bought a condo, but they're there once a year, they're there a couple times a year. So you have these wastelands where nobody's there, like nobody's on the sidewalk, because those people those millionaires who bought the condo or who have that mansion but they're never there, they're living in Southern California or in Arizona or something like that, or in Mexico. And so when you have millionaires that are taking up space, they're never using this space, then you have this wasteland because nobody really lives there. And the people who actually own the place don't want to live there. So where are the places, the cities, where they want you to live there? They don't just want your property taxes. They don't just want your status of being a millionaire. Where are the places that really want people who have, they've moved there, they want to shop at the grocery store on the corner, they want to go to the theater at the end of the block. Like, what cities want their people to really be there? Not just millionaires who are going to pay the property taxes and vote however the city council wants. And I think that's what America has lost, because everybody's just like so into their conspicuous consumption, and oh, I went to Thailand, and or I bought this or whatever. Like, people have lost what life was really like. And let me tell you, in the 20th century, people had one job. They were a stay at home mom, or they were like an engineer or something like that. And, or somebody was a teacher, or somebody was a poet, somebody was a singer, somebody was a no good, whatever. And, and people just like, they, they had their thing. They maybe had a family. Maybe they visited family a little bit, and maybe they did, something special on holidays or times of the season, 4th of July or whatever. Um, and there was only so much that needed to be spent. You know, there wasn't like, not everybody had the fanciest gadget. Not everybody, you know, was doing world travel, or um, had the finest makeup. But like now, it just seems like everybody feels like they have to have the latest designer, this or that, and makeup and hair and travel, you know, and technology devices. And so there's this pressure that people have to have this $200,000 a year lifestyle or something like that, or maybe it's not that much, but I don't know. I mean, whereas in the 20th century, people got by, I think, with a whole family, maybe $100,000. Maybe I'm off. I mean, I did come from very poor people, so maybe they were able to make it. And the thing is, like, that $100,000 was going to one person's kind of projects, so it wasn't spent on the family even. So yeah, people are just so into. They've bought into this just extravagant lifestyle, and taking their kids to soccer practice, and then to acting school, and then to whatever. And people are so busy, and so they can't even pay attention to who's on the road and be safe on the road. Like, whereas in the 20th century, yeah, maybe there was some boredom, but it wasn't boredom that couldn't be fixed with opening up a book, or putting on a record with the record player, or talking with friends, going out to a park, or going to see a movie. I mean, it wasn't that that boredom was not the death of us. Um, that, and so I just feel like there was this healthier 20th century, pre-tech kind of lifestyle, where people were being human and they were allowed to be human. Now everybody has to be superhuman. Everybody has to be like, having a personal record of how many lifts they do, and how great their six-pack abs are. And this is for women. It's like, um, we have really lost sight of what um, a satisfying human life is. And I mean, I'm not saying that I don't have this pressure as well. I do. But I think that if it was like 1950, and all the problems that were going on aside, which I think actually weren't what we thought they were. I think that there was like a Freemasonic Illuminati kind of spell casting that was going on that created problems. But um, I digress. So if we were, though, back in the 30s or 40s or 20s, and in more like ordinary places, maybe not like, when we see like black and white, uh, movies, videos, that was a situation where somebody happened to have a camera and the people happened to be right there. So, you know, so that whole context is suspect to me because we weren't seeing ordinary life. And every once in a while, I've seen like some old time black and white film of, somewhere off in Wales in the early 1900s. And, like when somebody was working on a farm in the 1900s, did they have, blonde highlights in their hair? Did they have like, um, a lovely gown embroidered? I mean, no. And even, and when somebody is doing a video recording, that's still not reality, right? Because when somebody's coming to film every day, you're going to do your best. You're going to put on your Sunday best and try to look nice or whatever. So we're still not getting an actual reality of the true day to day when we see these little vignettes, these little films of, remote locations of somewhere on a farm in the early 1900s or whatever. So, but those folks, like in their real day to day, all they needed to do was fulfill their role, their gender role, as a wife, as a mother, as a homemaker. And that was a lot. I mean, it was a busy life, and the father, the husband, the farmer, or the shoemaker, or whatever, those things kept people busy. They didn't have like a side business of creating ferments and selling them, and creating a new tattoo line, or I mean, so I think we're experiencing a detriment of dreams. Like we're beat to death with that. We're supposed to be so unique and creative and have dreams, and so we're so busy trying to figure out our dreams or be somebody, and we're not just being um, you know like being really good at one thing, let's say, or a few things. And maybe this is just a phase of civilization, of where we're at. But I wonder if we took things more simple, and instead of trying to be all things to all people, or um, you know, uh, or even be like, for me it's just being on top of all the information, and so better to decide what to do. Like perhaps a life could be a little bit simpler if we went back to how we did things before, um, rather than everybody having to know how to defrag their computer and get a privacy oriented phone. And I mean, because now we're having to be like, you know 10 different things. I mean, we have to know how to handle cyber attacks, and how to eat paleo, or it's like we have, like, it seems like there's this imperative that we need to have all this expertise, and it's just impossible to, like, at least speaking as a solo person. So anyways, there's a lot of pressures that we're all experiencing. And I think, and my point of this video was just like, if you own a lot of property, if you're hoarding properties, sell them, so people can, like, the people who really need them, like, don't sell it to another millionaire. Sell it to somebody who's working at the gas station, and that it'd be a 10 or 15-minute walk to them. Sell it to the guy who works at the laundromat. um like, and I think people need to be stop being so consumed with making a scandalous amount of profit. Like, sell your property for what what it's worth. Like, look at what, if you want your city to thrive and you're at a location where there's, a few boutiques and a number of restaurants and, record shops and, a little bath and, bauble fragrance place. Like, if your place is in a place like that, like, so, like, figure out how much those wages are. Maybe it's $12 an hour. So that person, maybe if they even get 40 hours a week, like, how much, it's like people they can afford maybe $300 a month. So I think, if you have a mansion and it's a 5-room or 6-room mansion or something like that, like, it should be like each room should be like $300 or $400, maybe 500. And you know, that's what I think. And of course, to find good roommates and whatnot, but I think that's a better way to go than selling places for $500,000 and getting it. Like, shame on people for getting $500,000 for a place, or $300,000. I mean, like, where are people getting this money? They're taking out loans, which is just a bunch of dots and circles and ones and circles. So it's not even real money. So people are playing this game, and then some people are putting in real money, I'm thinking. I mean, I don't know about all of this stuff, but it's just bizarre and insane how our world is. And I think it's a shame when people are busy making too much money, like too much money in a bad way. And when they're, charging rent, too much rent for a place that's not worth it. Even if and the thing is, people are like, oh, well, I think realtors must be like, oh, it's a walking distance. So we should charge extra for that. And the thing is, you should be able to have a nice place, a decent place that you can walk to work or walk to the store for a reasonable price. Like, it's like so punishing. They want you to buy a car, and then they want you to pay, like, be penalized for a walkable home. I just don't, it's just such a messed up world, folks. I don't know how much longer we're all going to be able to stand it, but I wanted to talk about that. So, and I hope somebody who owns a lot of properties that's in a nice location, that's walking distance, and if you're never there, I hope you sell it to a good person, that will rent it out. So people who work at the grocery store and the gas station and in the record store or whatever, like that, where they can find a place to live, because it's entry level people. And I really don't like how landlords are like jacking up the price, so students have to pay a lot. Like, I know, it costs to maintain a place, but I'm noticing landlords aren't putting money into a place unless, like, the plumbing has totally been destroyed or something like that. Like and as they should, but I don't really see them taking care of things like mold or other kind of, ignorable issues. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope this gives some insights to people who own property that they'd never use. Thank you for watching. God bless.